I would fix that within 24 hours. And if I win, before I get into the office, I will have that war settled. 100% sure. I want to stop the war. I don't want that war to continue. And I'll stop that war, mark my words, I'll stop that war in 24 hours. But we're in a position. As president-elect, if I win this election, the first thing I'm going to do is call up Zelensky and call up President Putin, and I'm going to say, you got to make a deal. This is crazy.
You know, by now, when you revisit the cartoonish campaign promises the incoming president made that somehow fooled enough people to think it made any damn sense, you can pretty much bet that before he's even inaugurated, he's been out completely taking them back.
A ton of world leaders have called you as well. We understand still no call with Putin. Is that a day one or week one call?
No, he wants to meet, and we're setting it up. President Xi, we've had a lot of communication, and we have a lot of meetings set up with a lot of people. Some have come, but I'd rather wait till after the 20th.
And when you say meet with Putin or meet with Xi, do you guys want to have some kind of a summit, or are they going to come here?
To be determined, but President Putin wants to meet. He's said that even publicly, and we have to get that war over with. That's a bloody mess.
It'd be kind of hard to end that war with Ukraine before he even takes office or within 24 hours of inauguration, the way he promised when Vladimir Putin won't even take his call. And now that voters who continue to be shown how little he cared about his latest promise that he had absolutely no desire to keep go to bat for him with more excuses for why he keeps tossing the middle finger their way, his ridiculous plan should have given them the idea that he was bullshitting the whole time.
Serious question. How do you stop that war in 24 hours?
I know both. And frankly, Zelensky was very good because he was part of the phone call. And he said, he didn't say anything wrong to me, the Democrat. He could have gone and grandstand and said, well, I felt threatened. He didn't. I get along with him. I get along with Putin. It would have been much easier to stop it before it started. Putin would have never done this. Would have been much easier. Right now, it's a mess. Now they're hitting Kiev and they're hitting all sorts of things that weren't supposed to be hit. The country is being decimated. By the way, the deaths are far more than they're reported. You know, when they say 9 apartment houses got knocked down and 2 people got hurt, no, hundreds of people died. The numbers are much different than what you're being told. I will get them into a room and they will, and I know an exact way. Number one, you tell one, you're not going to get anything unless you make a deal. You tell the other one, they're going to get a lot unless you make a deal. And you just sit them and you put them in, and you have to make a determination. And I'm telling you, within 24 hours, that whole thing will be settled. It'll be settled.
You know, he liked that rehearsed story so much, he regurgitated it multiple times in interviews for suckers to believe it made some kind of sense.
You said you could end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours.
Yes, I could.
How would you do that?
I know Zelensky very well. I felt he was very honorable because when they asked him about the perfect phone call that I made, he said it was indeed perfect. He said he didn't even know what they were talking about. And frankly, Zelensky was very good because he was part of the phone call. And he said, he didn't say anything wrong to me, the Democrat. He could have gone and grandstand and said, well, I felt threatened. He could have grandstanded, I felt threatened.
Well, that's not going to be enough for Putin to stop bombing
Ukraine. No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that I know Zelensky very well and I know Putin very well, even better. And I had a good relationship, very good with both of them. I would tell Zelensky, no more. You got to make a deal. I would tell Putin, if you don't make a deal, we're going to give them a lot. We're going to give more than they ever got if we have to. You tell one, you're not going to get anything unless you make a deal. You tell the other one, they're going to get a lot unless you make a deal. I will have the deal done in one day. Within 24 hours, that whole thing will be settled. It'll be settled.
So now that they no longer care about him ending the war in 24 hours, they should ask themselves why he repeatedly told them that he would. You know, it's another instance of MAGA leadership enjoying the ease of promising the world and not having to worry about voters ever expecting anything from him, even when the post-election reality is the exact opposite of what he vowed to do.
As it relates to Russia, Ukraine, the U.S., the relationship is quite fraught. And I think that the former and future president is going to quickly realize that his offer to settle this war within 24 hours is probably unlikely, very unlikely, I would say. In fact, there is no interest. I don't suspect there's much interest from Vladimir Putin to settle this war on any terms that would be remotely acceptable to the Ukrainians, to the Europeans. And we'll see whether they're acceptable to the U.S. and the new administration. But it's a zero-sum game for the Russians. Their interests are right now to make sure they win in Ukraine and get as much territory in Ukraine as possible.
You see answers like that from experienced people that are willing to tell the truth about the complexities and hurdles that are in the way of simply telling two countries' leaders to knock it off, or else the other will get some kind of treat that the first will wish he got, are too confusing for folks that have been told that Trump's presence simply will make the world do whatever he says for no damn reason. In fact, it highlights a possibility of simply giving Putin whatever he wants.
Well, the only way you could end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours would be by giving Vladimir Putin what he wants. And that's the last thing the United States should ever call upon Ukraine to do. Look, I think this war in Ukraine matters to the national interests of the United States for a couple reasons. Chief among them is that by giving Ukraine what they need to fight and repel the Russian invasion, we're going to prevent that Russian military, if they overran Ukraine, from crossing a border where under our NATO agreement, we would have to send our armed forces into harm's way. I think it's important. Just like Ronald Reagan said back in 1985, he said, if you're willing to fight our enemies on your soil, we'll give you the means to fight them there. So our men and women don't have to fight them.
His own vice president pointed out the ridiculous claim of calling himself the ruler of the world that'll end a military invasion by snatching the boys by the collar and shaking them into playing nicely together. And you won't be surprised that Trump himself admitted his plan is to do exactly what Pence said he would have to do, give Putin the land and territory that he wants.
Some people hear you say you're going to end the war in 24 hours, and they worry that means President Putin is going to get to keep the territory he's unlawfully
I'd make a fair deal for everybody. Nope. I'd make
Doesn't mean that? Wouldn't be a win for Putin?
That's something that could have been negotiated because there were certain parts, Crimea and other parts of the country, that a lot of people expected could happen. You could have made a deal. So they could have made a deal where there's less territory right now than Russia's already taken, to be honest. And you could have made a deal.
What we have right now, if they made a bad deal, it would have been much better. They would have given up a little bit, and everybody would be living, and every building would be built, and every tower would be aging for another 2,000 years.
So he'll have it done in 24 hours, but only if Zelensky gives territory that Putin invaded to take while murdering innocent civilians. But in reality, it'll actually take much longer once Trump finally gets Putin on the phone. Despite the fact that Putin is his best friend that totally respects him. MAGA voters' heads are spinning so fast, they can no longer figure out who their friends or enemies are in this situation. But the one thing they'll always hold on to is their blind loyalty to anything this guy tells them. Good luck with that.
I don't have a problem with Russia. I really don't. I have a problem with Ukraine. They're corrupt. I think that people are just ridiculous that they think that Putin's such this enemy. He isn't doing anything. He just wants back what was his.
But he invaded Ukraine, killing thousands of people.
That's fine. That's fine with me.
As a veteran yourself, does it concern you at all that Russian aggression could move even beyond Ukraine?
I don't think Putin's a problem. I think Zelensky's the problem.
Why do you think Putin's not the problem? He's the one that invaded Ukraine and has killed thousands of people.
Because Putin is trying to save his country from the likes of idiots like Zelensky and the elitists.